Hey, and welcome back after a little bit of a hiatus. Doing some videos. I wanted to pick this back up and do something I'm probably not going to do very often, but I felt like I had to when I purchased this game, and that's this Austerlitz 1805 new game from Trafalgar Editions, Spanish company, and it's something that I'm going to take a little bit of leap of faith, because it's well, probably wait until we get inside the box if you're not familiar with this. But as far as a traditional war game, this is going to be a little bit more miniature oriented, which I've never ventured into as far as gaming, but wanted to show people, if they haven't already seen this, the stunning artwork, almost maybe photographic, of this box. It is very evocative of the battle, or the morning leading up to the battle, because you see the mist, the fog down near the ground. I love the lone tree. If you look closely, there's a little bit more foliage and bushes here, but just the color is stunning. And then if you see this lone bird, to me that looks like a cardinal, but it could be anything of that size. It's just something you don't see often on game boxes. That, typical boxes, including pictures of battles and the action or the generals, or something to that effect. And this one takes a different tack, which I really, really like. And that is, what does it feel like before the actual commencement of the battle itself? So it's a pretty stunning box. I just want to compare, as it's a completely different game, obviously, and that's Mark McLaughlin's update of War and Peace. And this box is stunning too. This is an actual portrait. You can see, I actually had the opportunity to see the original one in Paris. It's at the military museum near Les Invalides, I believe, and then the tomb where Napoleon is actually buried. But there's a military museum on the north end, and this is a painting that you could see some of the paintings that are very similar to this in the Louvre and other places, but this is entirely appropriate, I think, given the theme, the War and Peace theme, the overall campaign and history during that time, the Napoleonic Wars and the Grand Campaign. So that's a wonderful box cover, but I think this one is perfect for what you're maybe about to experience when you play the game, or jump back in history. And what I really like is that it carries itself all the way onto the sides and the back. So that's pretty cool, actually. It looks great on the shelf. Of course, this is Spanish and originally, and then they did translation for English, which so far I've seen looks pretty good. But I wanted to appreciate that box. And of course this is, I think they call it the A2 size, as opposed to our normal 8.5 by 11 in the United States. You can see it's a little bit longer. I actually have some paper from my son was teaching in France for a year, and he ended up bringing back some A2 paper that he didn't use, so I try to get rid of that if I use it on some other things. But works fine in the machine, as long as you don't need to have it fit anything that's 8.5 by 11. And opening the box, glossy rule books. If you want to brush up on your Spanish, you can do that. But it has the English version, of course, and I haven't looked too much in detail yet on the translation and the rules, but it seems fairly straightforward, the way it's laid out. Since this is going to be a little bit more miniature style, even though you have only 15 pages, I imagine that it's not real dense as far as the writing. And there's quite a bit of pictures, graphics, examples of rules, and I think because it's a little bit different that way, that it'll take a little bit more to get into. Now, what's interesting about this, and because there is, of course, fog of war in this battle, they do have a solo gameplay section, which I'll be interested in taking a look at, and to see how that works. That's for 5.5 pages or so for solo gameplay, and then an example game turn that looks really good. Again, some people aren't fans of glossy, but unless you're reading with some, I mean, in the light that I have here, it's a little bit shiny, but I wouldn't be reading in this light normally. Be referring to the rules, but it's fine as far as I'm concerned. I think if they had a PDF of this, and I may end up copying anyway since I have A2 paper, I might end up copying this and then can make notes on it. I wouldn't want to write on any of these rules. So they're the rules. Some maps. It's like turn record, and I don't know how these work as far as gameplay. We'll find out. Very nice though. As most of those gamers are, I'm sure, one of the things we've grown up with through the years is a love of maps, and it's nice when games have some really great maps to go along with the main board. Scenario cards, 3 scenarios looks like. And they're glossy, pretty thick, very well done. Love the colors on these. We'll get to the units in a second, but I really like those. The blue and the green and the gray, but they're not, they have a little bit of texture to the color. They're not just solid blue or solid green. Really, really well done. And of course on the back, again, if you want to practice your Spanish. My French is Ironically, much better than my Spanish, but so really nice scenario cards. This looks like one player's aid card with terrain. Again, back is just Spanish, so now I know I'm not sure as far as readability, but again, I really like what they did with the textured colors on this. This is some of the best components I've seen for a game of this nature. Wow. Fire combat tables, English, Spanish, very nice. Okay, counters. We have 3 sheets. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go look, but I think you could have purchased, pretty sure you could have purchased the blocks with stickers. So it gives it a little bit more of that block feel that you might have in Guns of Gettysburg and those games. So if you wanted to spend the extra for those, you could have gotten those. But again, these are kind of a matte finish. They're not glossy. They do have these different sizes, but they're all fairly small. Try the other way. So if your eyes are like mine, it's going to take some doing and taking a look at these when they're on the board. Here's this even smaller one. Austerlitz. And then on square counters, a lot of markers. Again, these are pretty small. I don't know what size they'd be, but obviously metric. But they're pretty small. So whatever you have to do to be able to read all those. Again, just to reiterate, for those of you unfamiliar with the game, and I haven't checked on the rules, but this is a little bit different for me, but because it's going to be much more miniatures oriented, and you can see an artillery disc, not really a disc, cone for the range, and also with canister. These are probably for no, I guess here these are for movement. So you'd place these in order to move your units forward, depending on how fast they can go, cavalry, infantry, artillery. The only thing I would say about the counters and the markers is the size. Here's a marker for being in square, which is a little bit bigger. So that's the one thing I'm gonna have to deal with is being able to read them clearly. But again, as far as the palette of the colors, I'm very impressed. I just, it's a little bit like, I don't know, it's almost like the background of the colors. You get this textured look to them. It's almost like they're part of the earth. It's like they're in the terrain. Obviously the French are not in the ocean, but you get my meaning, I think. I just, if they were a little bit bigger, that'd be great. But otherwise, they look fantastic, and I'm anxious to see them on the board. As I mentioned before briefly, this does have a fog of war system, and I believe this is the trifold that you would put for doing some maneuvering if you're the Allied. You can see the Austrians and the Russians. And then the fog of war trifold card for the French. Nice. Again, really well done. 4 dice, 2 each. And then let me clear just a little bit to get the board out. Just a second here. And I believe that is going to be north south orientation, so maybe while I move Napoleon here. And there you get an idea of the whole board. And it's decently thick. I don't know how it will sit on flat surface. It doesn't feel like it needs to be reverse bent the other way too much to get it to be flat. These seams are fairly tight, so they stick together really well. Now you can see that this is not your ordinary old school war game. Well, I guess for those who do miniatures, this would be old school, but this really is miniature because the footprint for a miniatures tabletop would be quite large, and then the units would be bigger. So it's fairly condensed when you're doing this, but I think it looks good. Just if you take a look at putting a unit on the board, let's get to and I like what happens here with the units on the board because, oops, sorry, because this board is not real busy as far as colors. It's pretty muted with the beige for the hills and this very light off color, a little bit of texture, and just simple icons for some of the towns. Rivers look good, swamp, and what happens is you get, I think, no matter where these are, this great contrast on the board with those units. So if the board was a little bit more colorful with greens and browns and whatnot, this wouldn't pop out so much. So I like the choices they made here. That's very nice. So it looks good, and I'm anxious to take a dive into these rules and see how that works. Perhaps do a little bit without looking at the solitaire. So try to do that first and then maybe look at the solitaire rules. Who knows? Again, with the fog of war, it's probably not going to play. I'm sure that's why they put the solitaire rules in there. So, but this is Austerlitz 1805. And one last little note: my wife actually picked this box up. I should mention that Trafalgar editions, they've been great as far as their customer service and keeping people in the loop as far as their production and shipping, because with the pandemic, Spain was hit very hard and they weren't able to do a lot. And then they finally got a whole bunch of games shipped out, and I know you can find this on Noble Knight, but I'm glad I got it direct. And shipping was great, no problems with the box. But my wife picked up the box and took it in the house, and she said this fell out of the box. So I'm not sure what this is. If it's an actual cemetery near the battle site. I can't get in close enough to see any of the writing on the gravestones, but this is, I believe, French cemetery. I'll have to look this one up, but it's kind of ominous looking. But it also is, with the background and a little bit of the fog, kind of brings you back to that time. So I don't know if this is just something they put in all the boxes, and but I'm going to keep it with I don't know if it was in there originally, but it's nice, little extra. So that's Austerlitz 1805. Highly recommend if you want to give this system a try. Maybe can tune in I don't know, a week or so and give you my ideas. I noticed there's a couple of videos in Spanish, I think. And I can't understand Spanish enough to get a whole lot out of those. So hoping to give this a try and then send up a video and see what everybody else thinks too. Cool. It's a great looking game. See you next time.